Greetings and welcome back to room 303 in our Talks with Walt, as we are calling our readings through the deathbed edition of Walt Whitman's Leaves of Grass. We turn now to a little poem, My Picture Gallery. This one is poem 37 of the 38 of Autumn Rivulets, so we're just now a couple of poems away from finishing this section. We have commented in earlier lectures that autumn ever related to the old, rivulets ever related to the new. We're going to ask, why would a poem like this be placed inside of the Autumn Rivulet section? Some have called this a riddle poem, and that's kind of a fun way to think about this poem as well. The idea of poetic inspiration is going to be central to our study here, and I think our study of Leaves of Grass has proved that Whitman is very interested in artistic inspiration and where it comes from, and so we'll look at it here. Now, our assumptions are that you've been with us from the very beginning at learnstrong.net, down that left-hand side, Talks with Walt, our playlist, and you've been with us from the first introductory word come all the way through all the inscription poems up through and including a set of introductory comments to Autumn Rivulets, and then we just finished with All Thy Gifts. Now, our Nortons will tell us that the poem here, the picture gallery, is the poet's round house, that is to say, of course, the dwelling of his mind, within which the cicerone, or the guide, right, guides us among the pictures of memory. Now, Norton's will suggest the symbolism may remind us of the considerably different employment in Edgar Allan Poe's The Haunted Palace of 1839, where disorder has conquered the guide. This poem, first published in the American in October 30 of 1880, then in Leaves of Grass 1881, the poem originated as a small part of a pre-1855 29-page notebook entitled Pictures, about 115 lines, with the injunction, break all this into pictures. Passages are reflected in several Leaves of Grass poems and fragments. Now, as we end here with this poem, at the Autumn Rivulets, again, just the last two, we're going to point out the ways in which this poem is going to kind of be in some ways a setup for a whole lot of the stuff that we've read in Leaves of Grass to this point. Now, in some ways, many have argued that this is in fact Whitman's response to Alfred Lord Tennyson's Palace of Art, his 1842 offering. And in many ways, we're going to see the play of cataloging that is almost all visual in this play, and the ways in which this was already kind of a setup. We're going to see these lines, and kind of these elongated lines, and again, all of this is very early on in Whitman's writing career, although it ends up where it ends up here. And we're going to see, in some ways, some scholars have pointed out that maybe Whitman is responding to Orson Fowler's chronological gallery, and there's, I mean, I'll let you kind of run some of that to your own research. My Picture Gallery. Now, you think about the power of Plato's Republic and the cave allegory, and seeing shadows on the wall and all of that as it relates to this idea in this poem. And of course, you will remember in Spontaneous Me, he said the real poems, what we call poems being merely pictures, right? So his use of the word picture. And this is how he says it. In a little house, keep I pictures suspended. It's not a fixed house. It is round. It's only a few inches from one side to the other. Yet, behold, it has room for all the shows of the world, all memories. Here, the tableaus of life, and here, the groupings of death. Here, do you know this? This is Cicerone himself, with finger raised, he points to the prodigal pictures. Now, it's a fascinating set of lines on so many counts. Of course, Freud would spend all of his life, as would Jung, as would any number of other important psychologists, trying to figure out what it is that we call thought and consciousness. In some ways, we're playing that game here. Notice we'll begin with a little house. Obviously, he's talking about the space of the skull. Notice the language syntax, keep I, as opposed to I keep. And it's fun how Whitman plays these kinds of inverse word games all the way through Leaves of Grass. Of course, these pictures are suspended. It is not a fixed house. In other words, it's fluid, i.e. rivulets. So you can see why it fits easily in Autumn Rivulets. It's round. It's only a few inches from one side to the other. Again, riddle poem, right? The poet's mind. Yet, behold is significant. See, behold, watch, look. We've seen this all the way through Leaves of Grass. It has room for all the shows of the world, all memories. And that is truly amazing, that no matter what technology can produce, it cannot produce the human mind and consciousness. At least not to now. And Whitman would argue never will be able to produce that, right? And then we've got three heres in a row. Here, that is to say the mind. The tableaus of life. And here, the groupings of death. By the way, this tableaus of life, you can run it to ground. John Locke's idea of the tabula rasa and all of that. Notice the groupings of death. We immediately think of drum taps, don't we, here? Here, and then this, do you know this? It's fascinating. It's almost like the artist is the guide, the Cicerone, is saying, hey, are you familiar? Hey, let me show you this. And he says, with finger raised, the Cicerone, the guide, points to the prodigal pictures. Now here, prodigal will mean, right, beautiful, lavish pictures. And you'll remember that he used this term prodigal in Song of Myself 21. Prodigal, you have given me love. It's fascinating. It comes back to this as an adjective now, the prodigal pictures. What exactly is going on in this poem at 2a? Well, I think the argument that he's making, and it makes sense for a poem like this to be right here, right now at the conclusion of Autumn Rivulets, is that great poets are always trying to show us the pictures of the mind. And in that regards, they're trying to converse with us. They're trying to share with us their image of the world. And at 2a, I think that's the argument, is the greatest artists, they love the life of the mind. They love to show the life of the mind. And great poets are always about trying to remember through the pictures that are most compelling. At 2b, I love that there's so much of Whitman here from those earlier sets of lines as we've read them already. The cataloging is here. The length of the line is here. The compelling language and word choice is here. And of course that, selection of words in order, the syntax is here. Again, editing from a 115-line catalog to that was called Pictures. It's kind of amazing. And again, we call this a riddle poem. We can point that out. It's, of course, here in Autumn Rivulets for obvious reasons. The old autumn, the new rivulets, and the way in which poets are constantly reworking the old to make it new again. At 3a, we haven't mentioned a lot of Dostoevsky in these lectures, but we'll mention him now. Of course, the Crystal Palace comes to mind. Notes from the Underground is our text we're referencing here from 1864. I like to think as well about Wordsworth's Tintern Abbey. And now, while here I stand, the picture of the mind revives. And he'll go on to say, I dare to hope. And this idea of the picture of the mind, and it takes us as well to T.S. Eliot's Prufrock, throwing patterns on a screen. The way in which poets have ideas that they then try to share, and they do that through these powerful pictures. Finally, at 3b, how are we going to own a set of lines like this? Well, what is your picture gallery, and what's in your picture gallery? What are the images that for you most compelling? And is it possible that maybe one of your favorite pictures will, if not already be, soon will be, your study of Leaves of Grass? It's always fun to ask, like, when you read a poem and where you read it, to remember both. Thank you.